Good morning, students. Audio video is okay. Harish, audio
Yes,
video is okay.
yes, sir.
So, welcome in next lecture of Math F 211, Mathematics 3. So, presently we are studying Bessel function. So, in previous class, I have derived the Bessel function of the first kind, the solution of Bessel equation. So, Bessel equation of the first kind is nothing. It is a JPX is equal to, we denote the Bessel function of first kind by the JP. It is the standard notation, and it is equal to summation n is equal to 0 to infinity minus 1 to power n x upon 2 power 2n plus p upon factorial n and gamma of p plus n plus 1. So this is the Bessel function of the first kind. So most useful, or we call it as a Bessel function of order p. Most useful Bessel function are of order 0 and order 1. Means when we put p is equal to 0 and p is equal to 1, you will get the two important Bessel series J naught and J1. J naught and J1. So J naught will be means in this formula when we put p is equal to 0, here if you put the p is equal to 0 and here if we put the p is equal to 0, so you will get j naught x is equal to summation n from 0 to infinity minus 1 to power n x by 2 power 2n plus 0 upon factorial n gamma of the n plus 1 plus 0. So gamma of n plus 1 can be written as gamma of n plus 1 can be written as the factorial n. So here it will become summation n is equal to 0 to infinity minus 1 to power n into 1 upon factorial n whole square into x by 2 to power 2n. So when we open this, it will become it will become 1 minus x square upon 2 square. It's visible, no? 1 minus x square upon 2 square plus x to power 4 upon 2 square 4 square minus x to power 6 upon 2 to power 2 to power 2 square 4 square and 6 square. So in this way we can have the value of the J naught. So this is the Bessel series, right? This is the Bessel series. Similarly, when we put p is equal to 1, so p is equal to 1, so here we have the p is equal to 1, here we have the, means in general we have the n plus p plus 1, so p is equal to 1, so it is nothing, it is the p plus 1. So here it will give you the value uh, gamma of n plus p plus 1 or gamma of n plus 2. So gamma of n plus 2 can be written as gamma of n plus 2 can be written as factorial of n plus 1. Factorial of n plus 1. So here we have the summation n from 0 to infinity minus 1 to power n into 1 upon factorial of n plus 1 into x by 2 to power 2n plus 1. So as you put the value n is equal to 0, n is equal to 1, n is equal to 2, you will get this series x by 2 minus minus 1 upon factorial 1 factorial 2 into x by 2 power 3 plus 1 upon factorial 2 factorial 3 x by 2 to power 5 and so on. So this is the value of the J1x. So J0 and J1x are very important Bessel series, and in day to day we will use this series a lot. So in this, if the correct figure you can see from the figure 53. So if you draw the J0, so J0 shape is like this. J0 shape is like this, right? This is the graph of the J0 x, and the graph for the J1x, graph for the J1x is like this. Graph of the J1x is like this. So here you can see the graph of from the graph of the J1 and J0, we can observe that first of all both are oscillatory, right? Both are the oscillatory. Then after, both are damping, means its height, its amplitude are decreasing with the x. As you increase the value of the, x on this side, and here we have the value of the j naught or j1, right? So let's say this is the graph of the j1. So now it from the graph we can judge that it is matching, it is analogous with the sin x and cosine x also, right? Its shape is like, in the sin x and cosine x it is a periodic like this, but there is no damping. Here we have the damping only, right? But in the sin x and cosine x we haven't the dampness. So here we can observe for the from the graph we can observe that both graph are oscillatory in nature, right? Means we can see we have the periodic change in the graph. Then we have the infinite number of the positive zeros. In both we have the infinite number of the positive zeros. What is the meaning of the positive zero? These are the positive zeros where the value of the x, where the j naught or j1 are the zero, right? The positive x where j naught and j1 are the zeros, that are known as the zeros for the j naught and j1. So in the graph we have the infinitely many positive zeros. Then after, zeros occur alternatively. So you can observe from the graph that the zeros of the j naught and j1 are occurring, the zeros of the j naught and j1 are occurring alternatively, right? Means between the two consecutive zeros of j naught, there is always one zero of the j, right? Then after, the graph is damped. Damped means amplitude is decreasing continuously as we increase the x. So here the graph is damped and analogous to cos x and sin x. So what is the most important property of the cos x and sin x? When we differentiate the cos x, answer is the minus of the sin x. When we differentiate the sin x, answer is the cos x. In the same fashion, here we have the knowledge, here we have the relation that the derivative of the j naught, is equal to the minus of j1x, means derivative of the cos x is equal to minus of the sin x. So here we have the one relation that derivative of the j naught is equal to minus of the j1x, and derivative of x j1, is equal to x j naught. So as we have the relation between the cos x and sin x for the derivation, the similar type of the relation we have for the j naught and j1 also. Now, so till now we have computed only the one solution, jp, right, for the Bessel equation. Now for the another solution, what is the easiest approach? Because earlier we have seen we have the two exponent, k is equal to p and k is equal to minus p. So for the p we have computed the solution as a jp. So for the, if you put in place of the p, if you write the minus p, you will get the another solution. And when both solutions are linearly independent, then only we can write the general solution. So now next is how to determine the general solution. So here, to determine the general solution, what we have to do? We have to determine the second linearly independent solution. Then only you can write C1y1 plus C2y2, the general solution. So here we have to determine the second linearly independent solution. And what should be the nature of the second linearly independent solution? That must not be the constant multiple of the first solution. Means we cannot say that all, because always the c1 into solution is always the solution, but that will be not a linearly independent solution, right? So that must not be the constant multiple of the jp, because jp is the first solution, so that must not be the constant multiple of the jp. So now we have to determine the Bessel function of the second kind. For determining the general solution, we have to determine the second linearly independent solution, and that second linearly independent solution we termed as a Bessel function of the second kind. So now natural procedure, right? Natural procedure is to try the other exponent m2 is equal to minus p. So means gut natural is the always you put k is equal to minus p. In general, it work. So but when I have taught you the Frobenius resolution method of the Frobenius resolution, I have told you the second solution you can get the second linearly independent solution you can get through the second exponent. But if the difference between the two exponents, if the difference between the two exponents are integer, then we have the problem. Or if the difference between the two exponents are zero or integer, then we have the problem. Then we can have some problem in determining the second linearly independent solution. So here we have written that so here may expect the difference when m1 minus m2 is equal to m1 minus m2. M1 we assume as a p and m2 as a minus p. So p minus minus of minus p, that will become the 2p. If this 2p, if this 2p is 0 or the integer, then you cannot determine, you cannot write directly the j of minus p. In that case, we have to determine the second linearly independent solution in the different way. So here, that is whenever the non-negative constant p, when the m1 minus m2 will be the 2p, when the m1 minus m2 will be the 2p, or p minus p will be the 2p, or integer, when the 2p is the integer, when p is either the integer, right, when p is either an integer, then 2p is also integer, or when p is the half of the odd integer. So here constant p is an integer or the half of the odd integer, then we have to go with the another approach. So here in the conclusion I have written here, that is whenever the non-negative constant p is an integer or half of the odd integer, then the first case is the more, right, first case is more important, right, first case is more important or more serious. There we have to determine the solution in that different way. So I will tell you where we have the problem. So here let us assume that p is not a integer. When p is not an integer, what is the easiest approach? Just you replace the p by the minus p in the jp, you will get the j of minus p, right? So you know that what is the jp? What is the jp? Jp is the summation n is equal to 0 to infinity minus 1 to power n x by 2 to power 2n plus p upon factorial n gamma of n plus p plus 1. So if you have to write the second linearly independent solution or j of minus p, j of minus p, so it will become, just wherever we have the p, you replace with the minus p. So it will become summation n is equal to 0 to infinity minus 1 to power n x by 2 to power 2n minus p upon factorial n gamma of n minus p plus 1. That is our second solution. So the general solution in this case will become y is equal to, general solution will become the c1 jpx plus c2 j of minus px. That is our general solution. Because now we have the second solution. So in this case, replace the p by the minus p. Replace p by the minus p. Otherwise, the whole derivation, whole procedure for driving the j minus p will be the same. So just easiest way is, in the main formula, you replace the p by the minus p. So derivative and discussion are almost same without any change. So hence you get the jp by the minus p. Now now what where we have the problem? When the p is integer or p is the half multiple of the odd integer. So here the recurrence relation or the recurrence formula for the for an reduced to. So when we put p is equal, when we take the another exponent, so our recurrence relation, general recurrence relation I have already derived. So in that, when we put m is equal to minus p, so here the recurrence relation will come uh, n into minus 2p plus n an plus an minus 2 is equal to 0. In previous class, I have derived this recurrence relation. So in this recurrence relation, when we put m is equal to minus p, you will get the required, right, required recurrence relation. So here the recurrence relation will be the an is equal to minus an minus 2 upon minus 2p plus n into n. Now, when we have the problem with the denominator, when we take, if you take the p is equal to half, if you take the p is equal to half, so minus 2p will become minus 1. And when we take the n is equal to 1, so minus 1 plus 1, 0. When the p is equal to 3 by 2, minus 3. When the n is equal to 3, minus 3 plus 3 will become the 0. Right? So here we are facing the problem when p is equal to half of the odd integer, half of the odd integer, right? So in that case we cannot determine the we cannot use the recurrence relation. Means if we are not able to use the recurrence relation, it means you are not able to determine the ans. So here, if the p is equal to half, n is equal to 1, so here we have the minus 2p plus 1, right? a1 is equal to 0. In that case, we have the a1 is equal to this will, so no compulsion, because this factor is 0. So there is no compulsion to assume that a1 is equal to 0, because during the derivation of the jp we have assumed, we have seen that a1 is equal to 0. But here we have, due to this, because bracket is coming 0, there is no compulsion to assume a1 is equal to 0. Similarly, if you have the p is equal to 3 by 2, so yes, similarly if p is equal to 3 by 2, n is equal to 3, right, so there is no compulsion to assume a1 is equal to 0. So as a special case, we can assume that a1 is equal to 0. So if you take as a special case, there is no compulsion to assume the a1 is equal to 0, but as a special case, because it is a constant, we are assuming that all the odds are all the odds coefficients are the 0. So here but just we assume that take the a1 is equal to a3 is equal to a5 is equal to 0, right? So in that case you will get the j of minus p, right? In this case you will get the j of minus p. So it is the exactly, means we are facing the problem, but there we have the compulsion to assume the a1, but here we haven't the compulsion, but we are assuming that a1 is equal to 0. So you are getting the same j of minus p in that case also. So j of minus p will become the summation n is equal to 0 to infinity minus 1 to power n x by 2 to power 2n minus p upon factorial n into gamma of the n minus p plus 1. Now, in this case, the first term of this series is, what will be the first term for this series? First term for this series is the what? There the first term in general, what is the Frobenius series? What is the Frobenius series? X to power p, right? X to power p or x to power minus p, and 1 minus, right? 1 minus, or you can say a naught plus a1x plus a2x square plus a3x cube and so on, right? We have this series. So what, depending over the value of the a naught, we have the different things, right? So here the first term first term of the series will be the 1 upon factorial of minus p x by 2 to power minus p, and there we have the first term is 1 upon factorial p x by 2 to power p. So in that case, if you assume
near x is equal to 0, near x is equal to 0, j of minus p is unbounded. J of minus p is unbounded and j of p is bounded. It means both are linearly independent. Since the first term is different for the jp and j minus p, first term of the j minus p is unbounded because here we have the 1 upon x, that is the infinity, right? Because x to power minus p, so that will come 1 upon x to power p, and p is always the positive, so that will give you infinity, right? Near x is equal to 0, that will give the infinity, so that will be the unbounded. So since the first term is unbounded for the j minus p, and first term for the jp is bounded, so what it implies? It implies that if this is the graph of the jp and this is the graph of the j minus p, so you can see that both are independent series. Both are independent series. If both are the independent series, so what will be the general solution? General solution is the c1 jp plus c2 j minus p. In this way we can write the general solution. Otherwise you cannot write, na? So y is equal to, therefore the general solution will be the y is equal to c1 jpx plus c2 j minus px. But this is true only when p is not an integer. When the p is integer, then you cannot write like this. If p is integer, you cannot write like this. So for writing the general solution, for p must be non-integer.
Sir, P also cannot be half, right?
No, for the half we have assumed that a1 is equal to 0. That case we have discussed, na? There is no compulsion, but we are assuming. It is creating the problem, but we are assuming that a1 is equal to 0. So that with that we are overcoming the problem. Then the derivation will be the same. Now, when p is an integer, case second, when p is an integer, let's say p is equal to m. I am saying that where we are facing the problem. So when p is an integer, let's say p is equal to m greater than equal to 0. In that case, what is the value of the j minus m? Just you put the value of the p in place of the value of the, means you replace the p by the, or p by the minus m, right? In the jp, just you replace the p by the minus m, so it will give you summation, because jp is what? Jp is the summation n is equal to 0 to infinity minus 1 to power n x by 2 to power 2n plus p upon factorial n gamma of n plus p plus 1. So you replace the p by the minus m, so you will get the j of minus m x. So it will come summation n is equal to 0 to infinity minus 1 to power n x by 2 to power 2n minus m upon factorial n gamma of n minus m plus 1. Clear this part? Now gamma of n plus 1 can be written as factorial of minus m plus n. Can be written as factorial of minus m plus n. And in last class, when I have taught you the gamma function, I have told you the 1 upon factorial of negative integer is what? 0, right? 1 upon factorial of negative integer is 0. So if the n is equal to 0 minus m, I have taken the m greater than equal to 0, greater than equal to 0. So if the n is equal to 0, so minus m plus 0, right? That is the negative integer. Minus m plus 1, also the negative integer. Minus m plus 2, also the negative integer. Minus m plus m minus 1 is also negative integer. But as minus m plus m, that will be the 0, and factorial of 0 is equal to 1. So 1 upon 1, that will give you some value. But up to the, from n is equal to 0 to m minus 1, 1 upon factorial of n minus m plus n will be the 0. So in that case, you can start your summation instead, because before the m, all the sums are zero, right? All the sum factor are zero. So you can start, you can means I'm saying that for the n is equal to 0 to m minus 1, all these terms are the zero. So you can start your summation from n is equal to m. That is a very crucial step. In the above step, we have the n is equal to 0 to infinity. Now we have the n is equal to m to infinity. Why we are taking from m to infinity? Because up to the m minus 1, all the terms are zero, right? All the terms are zero. So here we have the summation, summation n is equal to m to infinity minus 1 to power n x by 2 to power 2n minus m upon minus m plus n is equal to 0. So here I have written the reason, since 1 upon factorial of minus m plus n for is equal to 0 for n is equal to 0, 1, 2 up to the n minus 1. Now if you replace the n plus m by the n, if you replace the n plus m by the n, so you will get j of minus m is equal to, right? So just you replace the so here you will get the n is equal to 0 to infinity, right? N is equal to 0 to infinity minus 1 to power n plus m, minus 1 to power n plus m, means everywhere just in place of the n you replace by the n plus m, right? Everywhere just you replace by the n plus m, you replace by the n plus m, you replace by the n plus m, right? So n plus m is equal to m to infinity. So m and m cancel out. So here we have the summation n is equal to 0 to infinity minus 1 to power n plus m x by 2 to power 2 into n plus m minus m upon factorial of n plus m into factorial of n. Clear this part, right? So now if you take minus 1 to power m as a outside of the summation, so inside we have the minus 1 to power n, because here we have the minus 1 to power n plus m, and x by 2 to power 2n plus m upon factorial n factorial of n plus m, and factorial of n plus m can be written as gamma of n plus m plus 1, right? So what is this formula? What is this summation? This summation is nothing, that is the JMX. It is the formula of the JMX, right? So it means this implies that J of minus mx, J of minus mx is nothing, that is the constant multiple minus 1 to power m, constant multiple of JMX. It means you cannot write the general solution. Means Jm and J minus m are not linearly independent. Jm and J of minus m are not Li, are not Li, are not Li. It means we cannot write a general solution as C1Jm plus C2J minus m, right? So for this, so if you are not able to write the, it is very important relation. Generally we ask what is the means whether they are the Li or not for the particular value of the p. So you must know that for the when p is integer, they are not Li. So here Jm and J minus m are not independent. So y is equal to C1Jm plus C2J minus m is not a general solution because they are not Li. Clear this part? So now we have to write the general solution. So how we can write? You know the method of for writing the second solution, article 16. If you know the one solution, by the article 16 you can determine the second linearly independent solution by taking y2 is equal to v of y1, article 16, right? By article 16 or section 16, by article 16, you can determine the second linearly independent solution. But what is the y1 here? JP, JM, JP or JM, right? So in that case, and that is the series, that is the summation infinite series. So it and if you recall, so to determine the second independent solution, we use the approach of the section 16, use of the known solution. So y1 is what? JM. Y1 is what? JM, right? So y2 will be the v into y1, where v is what? V is the integral of 1 upon y1 square e to power minus p dx, right? Integral p dx into dx. Now so here the y1 is what? Jm. So 1 upon jm square e to power minus, what is the p? 1 upon x. For the Bessel equation, what is the capital P? 1 upon x. So e to power minus integral 1 upon x dx into dx, right? So into jm, v into y1, so into jm, so it can be written as jmx integral dx upon x into square of jm, square of the jm. So now main problem is, first we have to square the infinite series, then we have to integrate term by term, right? First we have to square the infinite series of jm, then we have to integrate term by term. So in that, to avoid that, presently it is not in your course, it is very higher study, so I am giving till now I have not said that j minus p is the Bessel function of the second kind. In starting I have to determine the second solution, second linearly independent solution, that we termed as a Bessel function of the second kind. So here we are writing directly which will work for the both, whether p is integer or not integer. So here the second Bessel function of the, or the standard Bessel function of the second kind is defined as, we write it as a yp. Instead of the j minus p, we write as a jp, yp, and it is equal to jp cos pi minus j of minus p x upon sin p pi. So, and this is the linearly independent with respect to jp. So the general solution will become,
Excuse me, sir.
yes,
Sir, is P equals to 1 by X?
p is equal to
1 by X.
1 by x. Actually we have na equation x square y double dash plus x y dash plus x square minus p square y is equal to 0. So y double dash plus 1 by x y dash plus x square minus p square upon x square y is equal to 0. So that is the p. From here we have started na singularity.
Yes, yes.
So here the yp is equal to jp plus jp into cos pi minus j of minus p upon sin pi. So from here the general solution will become c1 c1 jp plus c2 yp. That is the our general solution of the given Bessel equation, right? So when the p is not integer, simply you write c1 jp plus c2 j minus p. But when p is integer, in that case it's better you write the c1 jp plus c2 yp. From here it is coming, presently you have not to study, just you remember this. So where we have faced the problem when p is integer, so here we are seeing that when we take ym means p is equal to integer, so ym means limit p tends to m by p, so m is an integer. In that case it is also working. So right, if we, and here the yp is unbounded near region, near origin, Means as we have seen for the J0 and J1, here also yp because the first term, means in this case in the book we have the fair diagram. If the graph of the jp is like this, so we have the graph of the yp like this. So here you can see that the first term of the yp is also unbounded. So being the first term unbounded for the jp and bounded for the yp and bounded for the jp, yp and jp are linearly independent, so we can write the general solution. So if we seek the bounded solution near x is equal to 0, right, in general require for the application, we must take the C2 is equal to 0. Actually, for the general solution is what? C1 JP plus C2 YP. But YP is what? Unbounded. YP first term is unbounded. Unbounded solution is not of much use. Theoretically it gives a solution, theoretically it gives a solution, but when we have to apply in the propagation of the wave, when we have to apply in the planetary motion, as I have told you in previous class, we have the so many applications for the Bessel function, Bessel equation, right? So there you cannot use those solutions. So for this application purpose, we have to assume that C2 is equal to 0, then only you can use for the practical purpose.
Sir, shouldn't P be an integer in the previous case?
What for the YP?
Yes, sir. It's
No,
written.
YP will work for the both. YP will work for both. Means when it is integer, when it is not integer. In both case, it will give the solution. Clear?
Yes, sir.
Now, question number 1 from your book. We know that I have already derived the form Bessel series for the J0 and J1. So here use J0 is equal to 1 minus x square upon 2 square plus x over 4 upon 2 square 4 square minus x over 6 upon 2 square 4 square 6 square and so on. And J1 is equal to x by 2 minus x cube upon 2 square into 4 x cube upon x plus x cube upon 2 square 4 square into 6 and so on. Now we have to show that j naught dash derivative of the j naught is equal to minus of the j1 and derivative of x j1 is equal to x j naught. Means whatever the relation we have for the sin x and cosine x, the same type of the equation we are getting, same type of the derivative we are getting for the j naught and j1. So it's simple, already they have given the value of the j naught, so just you take the derivative term by term, just you take the derivative term by term. So derivative of the j naught x is equal to minus 2x, right? Derivative of this is the 2x, derivative of this is the 4 into x cube, derivative of this is the 6 into x power 5. So just to take the derivative of j naught term by term, you will get the minus 2x upon 2 square plus 4x cube upon 2 square 4 square minus 6 in x to power 5 2 square 4 square 6 square and so on. So from all, if you take the minus common, so here you will get the x by 2, because here the 2 and 2 cancel out, 4 and 4 cancel out, 6 and 6 cancel out. So here you will get some mistake, I think this is the minus, this is your plus. So x by 2 minus x cube upon 2 square into 4 plus x to power 5 upon 2 to power 4 4 to power 2 to power 2 4 to power 2 into 6. And what is this? This is the j1, already we have derived, so this is equal to j1. So here we have the derivative of the j naught is equal to minus of the j1. Similarly, what is the second relation? Derivative of x into j1 is equal to x into j naught. So in the first equation you multiply with the x, so everywhere when you multiply with the x, right, then you take the derivative. So dy dx of x square minus x over 4 upon 2 square into 3 plus x over 5 x over 6 upon 2 square 4 square 6 and so on. So when we take the derivative, so its derivative will be the 2x, its derivative will be the 4x cube, its derivative will be the 6x to power 5. And from all, if you take the x common, so inside the bracket we have the x into 1 minus x square upon 2 square plus 4 x over 4 upon 2 square 4 square and so on. And what is this bracket? That is the j naught. So here we have the dy dx of x j1x is equal to x into j naught x. Clear? Now, with the graph I have shown you, between the two consecutive zeros of the j naught, always there is one zero of the j1. Between two consecutive zeros of j1, always we have the 1 0 of the j naught. Means zeros of j naught and j1 occur alternatively. Right? So the same thing we have to prove in the question number 2. Use problem 1. Problem 1 means relation between the j naught and j1. Derivative of the j naught is equal to j1 minus of j1, and derivative of x j1 is equal to x j naught. So use problem 1 and Rolle's theorem to show that between any two positive zeros of j naught there is zero of the j1, and between any two positive zeros of j1 there is zero of the j naught. Or indirectly what we are proving, the zeros of j0 and j1 occur alternatively. So first you have studied the Rolle's theorem in the math 1. So what is the Rolle's theorem? Let us brush up the Rolle's theorem. What is the Rolle's theorem? Rolle's theorem is, let f be function that satisfy the following three hypotheses. What are the three hypotheses? It must be continuous in the closed interval. It must be, right? So first one is f is continuous in a closed interval a comma b. F must be differentiable in the open interval of the ab, right? F is differentiable in the open interval ab, and fa is equal to fb, and fa is equal to fb means, so here let's say here we have the a, here we have the b, right? Anywhere you take, let's say here we have the a, here we have the b. So only the condition is f must be the continuous in the closed interval ab, f must be differentiable in the open interval ab, and fa is equal to fb, and fa is equal to fb. So when fa is equal to fb, right, let's say this is the a, this is the b, so fa is equal to fb, whatever the value, but fa is equal to fb. Then there exists a point c, there exists a point c between ab, there exists a point c between ab such that f dash c is equal to 0. Why f dash c is equal to 0? Because either we have the maximum point or we have the minimum point, and you know that for the maximum or for the minima, first derivative is equal to 0, right? So always there exists a point c between a and b, right, for which f dash c is equal to 0. That is the Rolle's theorem. Clear the what is the Rolle's theorem? So now we have to use the Rolle's theorem for this. So let us assume fx is equal to j naught. Now we will prove that between the two consecutive zeros of j naught there is 1 0 of the j1. So let fx is equal to j naught. So j naught is differentiable, right, in the open interval ab, and j naught is the continuous in the open closed interval ab, and fa is equal to fb. What is the meaning of the fa is equal to fb? All the three hypotheses means j naught a is equal to j naught b, x is equal to a, x is equal to b. So j naught a is equal to j naught b, and the both are zeros. Both are zeros. Let's say this is the graph of the J naught. So let's say this is the A, let's say this is the B. So at this point, we assume that J naught A is equal to J naught B is equal to 0. Means FA is equal to FB is equal to 0. Right? So by the Rolle's theorem, there exists a point C. There exists a point C such that J naught dash C is equal to 0. J naught dash C is equal to 0. By the Rolle's theorem, the F dash C is equal to 0 means J naught dash C is equal to 0. And what is the J naught dash? By the problem 1, minus of J1 C is equal to 0. And minus will come in the merge with the 0. So it will give you J1 C is equal to 0. And what is the J1 C is equal to 0 means? C is the 0 of J1. C is the 0 of the J1. And C lie between A and B. Right? C lie between A and B. So that proved that between the two consecutive zeros of the J naught, there is one zero of the J1. Clear this part? Right? So here we have the J1 is equal to C. So between any between two consecutive zeros of the J naught, right, there is one zero of the J1. In the same fashion, we have to prove for the second one. Let A and B are two zeros of the J1. What is the meaning of the zeros? It means J1A is equal to J1B is equal to 0. If A and B are two consecutive zeros of J1, so J1A is equal to J1B is equal to 0. Now you define the function let fx is equal to x into J1. Let fx is equal to x into J1. So fa will become a into J1A, and J1A is what? 0. So a into 0, that is the 0. So fa is equal to 0. Similarly, fb will become b into J1B. J1B is equal to 0. So b into 0. So it will become the 0. Right? So now we have the fa is equal to FV is equal to 0. The third hypothesis of the Rolle's theorem. Fx is continuous, xj1 is continuous between closed interval AB, and fx is differentiable because we have computed a derivative of the xj1. So fx is differentiable in the open interval AB. So by Rolle's theorem, what you will get? There must be the point C. There must be the point C, right, between AB such that derivative of xj naught, right? Their derivative of xj naught x, right, must equal to 0. So that is the C point. So x is equal to C we have to take. So here you will get the C j naught C is equal to 0. That will implies j naught C is equal to 0. And when the j naught C is equal to 0, what this implies? C is the zeros of j naught, right? C is the zeros of the j naught which lie in the AB. So by Rolle's theorem, there exists a number C such that f dash C is equal to 0, where C lie between A to B. That implies that x j naught for x equal to C is equal to 0, or C j naught C is equal to 0, or j naught C is equal to j naught C is equal to 0. This implies that C is the zeros of the j naught which is in between zeros of the J1. Or by combining both results, we can say that zeros of the J0 and J1 occur alternatively. Right. So in next class we continue. Any problem?
Online, any problem?
No, sir.
Thank you. Will replace the m by the, so that is not a promise, and that will become very difficult. You can use, but that will not remain the promise. You can use that. मतलब उसी से वो डेरिवेटिव किया गया, तो उतना हम टिपिकल यहाँ पे विधि पढ़ाने जाएंगे तो 2-3 लेक्चर तो उसको बाय निकालने में लगता है. That we are writing directly. We have used, these things are coming from that only, but we are not teaching. Just we are saying that second kind of Bessel function is the biting. Directly we are writing, but derivation procedure is the same. Whatever we have studied in the section 30.